One, two, three. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of True Crime and Cocktails. We're so glad that you're here. As always, I am your host, Lauren Ash, and as always, I am joined by my co-hostess with the mostess, Christy Oxborrow. How you feeling?
Great.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Love to hear it. Love to hear it. I got a couple. I got an update that I think people are really going to
Oh,
enjoy. For those, I don't know which episode we talked about it in because they blur together and there's really no way to know.
yeah.
But I was talking about how I need to clean out my spare bedroom. That I have a spare bedroom in my
Right.
home that you can't
Yes.
open the door to.
Yes.
And we did get into that Christy has left some stuff here over the past couple of years. And so then we were talking
Mhm.
of course about having to take a road trip to meet in the middle to exchange the goods.
Of course.
I need the listeners to know that after we released that episode, I felt immense guilt because I was like, I'm laying it on a little thick here. Like, how much stuff did she really leave? Like, come on, Lauren. Like, the room's a disaster. It's not her fault. I'm sure that it just feels like it's more of her stuff because the room is just so full of everything. And then I
Mhm.
I I started cleaning out the room today and I sent her a picture. And well, it is more than I thought.
Yeah.
So I love that
Yeah.
I was beating myself up about it because I felt so
Mhm.
guilty that I was, like, painting you in a way, and
Nope.
then
Paint away. Yeah.
oh god, what a gift. What a
Yeah.
gift.
It's
But
the
it's
fact
good.
that I have almost more things in that home than you do.
No, I mean, like, that's the updated for those who are watching.
It's the best that she sent me a photo that was so full of things, and I had to keep zooming in and going, "What is that? Oh, right." Um, and then she sent the photo, and then almost a second later was like, "Ah, shit, I found another box."
Yeah,
And so it was just like, "Oh, so it's still going,
yeah.
still going."
Yeah, but listen, it's like the equivalent of, like, 6 small boxes. I guess medium size. I'm
I
trying
mean,
to
I
think of,
look
like
I looked at it and went, "I don't know if I flew there with 2 large empty suitcases, I
no,
couldn't get that all in.
no.
I'd have
If
to
you
bring just the
came
clothes on my back
Yep.
and, like, 3
Yeah,
empty bags."
yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Oh, yeah, no, I don't think so. I don't think
yep,
so.
yep.
But listen,
So
it's a
again,
gift.
we're circling back to this meeting in the middle and see
Yeah,
how
I
this
mean, it's
goes.
what I'm learning is truly there might not be any other options. Otherwise, we're
Yeah.
talking about like we're gonna need to come up with a travel schedule that involves like anytime I come to you, I bring a suitcase of goods. Whenever you come, you bring an empty suitcase. Like, and I think
Mhm.
picking away at it, it's still gonna take years.
Yes, because when I go there, I'm inevitably gonna
Yeah,
buy more shit and go,
yeah.
"Uh-oh, I can't bring it home." I got so much stuff last time that even though there were 5 or 6 suitcases amongst my family,
Yeah,
still didn't have enough to bring it home.
yeah.
I had to leave so
Well,
much
and the
stuff.
the other thing to remember too is that there is technically still stuff here from when you came here for us to appear on the Kelly Clarkson show, which I believe was 3 years ago now.
Um, yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds right.
Yep. How
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah, and gun to my head, list 3 things. Not a clue.
Yeah. No.
What's something that I bought that I know I left behind? I don't know. I
Yeah.
got nothing. Like, I can't even think of anything that's in those bags, so,
Oh, I've made some discoveries in there that are, wild to say the least. I mean, I found an entire box of receipts from 2013.
well,
I was like, I guess these can go. Um, yeah, there's so
that's
much
nice
stuff
to
in
find
there.
an immediate purge.
Oh, yeah. But you know what's been good? And I don't want to speak too soon. So I hope this doesn't jinxing me, but I found a bunch of like storage containers in there, but each one of them was only like half full, which is actually kind of a relief because then it was like by the time
Sure.
I cleaned out and threw out a bunch of it, then I was like, oh wow, of these 4 containers, I only have like a half of one left.
Hey.
So it's like consolidating. I've been talking about cleaning out that room for at least 2 calendar years. So it's long time coming, but we're getting there. We're getting there. Now, I do have to quickly segue that I had to take a break because I started watching this new Max documentary. This is not an ad. I need to make that clear. They're not giving me money. And what I'm going to say also isn't 100% positive. So, um,
Mhm, mhm.
it's not on Max. It's not Max's fault. It's not Max's fault at all.
I
Doesn't
like
matter.
that we're talking about Max like Max is a person.
You know what? I enjoy Max. Again, I'm not being paid to say this. I like the content over there.
Sure.
But the documentary is Born Evil: The Serial Killer and the Savior. It's multiple parts. Not all of the parts have come out yet. This is what I wanted to talk about because I actually felt like I had to turn it off. Um, which made here's what the truth is. I was trying to procrastinate. I put it on because I was like, I know I'll get invested in this, and then I won't be able to start cleaning up the room today. Well, the good news is that I became so angry at one point that I had to turn it
Oh.
off. But
Oh.
again, this is nothing to do with Max or technically the documentary. They were presenting the evidence or presenting the facts. So here's what it is. And I'm not going to get into all the details because it's new and people should check it out. And what I'm about to say is not a spoiler. I mean,
Sure.
it's a detail, but to me, it's like not integral to the case. And I'm just going to speak about it in broad terms anyway. If you don't
Yeah.
want to hear that, skip ahead. Um, I'm not going to get into all of the details. Let's just say there was a murder. Shocking.
Well, in a serial killer
In a serial killer
documentary.
documentary, there was
Yeah.
a murder. But here is the thing, and you all are going to love this. So they have the suspect in police custody, and they have footage of the interrogation. And
Yeah.
when I tell you, this man asked for a lawyer, probably no fewer. They quoted in the thing as saying about 200 times. And the police would not let him see a lawyer and continued to bring in different detectives to do all kinds of extremes with this man. Now listen, this man is a fucking piece of shit, garbage,
Yep.
terrible human. I
Sure.
am not in any way saying that it's like, but what made me upset about it, everyone's gonna love this, and I've been reading lately that, an ADHD there's an ADHD thing, something about, like, justice sensitivity, and it's funny because my whole life I've said that the one thing that upsets me more than anything is
It's
injustice,
injustice.
and I was
Yeah.
like, "Wow, maybe that's another, part of my pathology," but anyway, what it is for me is that you can't do it. You can't do it. The justice system works in a specific way for a specific reason, and if we do it
Mm.
with him, then you can do it with anybody, and that's not right. And it doesn't protect people where the system also, by the way, is wildly flawed. But the things that you watch in this footage are insane. The stuff they were doing to this man. And again, I won't get into the details as the spoiler. But I literally had to take a break. I had to take a breath. And I think the thing that upset me the most was that they kept saying they were like, well, we knew that nothing was going to be admissible in court if we got it out of him in that moment. We knew that because he kept asking for a lawyer and we kept refusing. But we really wanted to push him to see if we could get him to admit to it. And I was like, to what end? To
Yeah.
then bungle it in court? Like, they're saying repeatedly they knew like, it was just one of those things that, again, it's not that I was like, I feel bad for the serial killer. It was the injustice that I was like, you cannot manipulate the system in this way because we've
Yeah.
also seen a million cases doing this show and just, et cetera,
Yeah.
where that stuff happens to innocent people. And that's how you get false confessions. And that's how people do jail time for crimes they didn't commit because they're sitting in
Yeah.
these, 26-hour interrogations. Um, but yeah, so anyway, I just had to put that out there because it was really it stuck with me is the point. It stuck with me. And let me get this straight. To be clear, the content of the murders was worse. Like that's
Sure.
obviously bothered me. I don't want people to watch it and then go like, "This didn't bother her?" Of course it did. Um, but I think it was
Mhm.
just watching the footage.
Sure.
Because if you see the footage in like Making a Murderer and they're, interrogating I can't remember the kid's name. It's heartbreaking because this kid is clearly has no concept of what's going on and you can see how they're leading him
Sure.
and whatever. This was like straight up like wild abuse, like just like
Oh.
mental, physical, emotional warfare.
It's just wild to, like, to outright say, like, well, we knew nothing was going to be admissible in court. We just wanted him to confess. And it's like, but what would that have done?
Right, because then the confession would get thrown out.
Yeah.
We all
Like,
see this. We know how we know what happens when you get to the law part of the Law& and Order show. Like, you can't do this.
yeah. Yeah.
And here's the spoiler, like, he didn't break.
Mm,
Like, it's like, that's the other thing, is that it was like, if this person is cunning,
sure.
what makes you think it then it just becomes like, it feels like ego, right? That it's like, we can get him.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's just, again, it's, well, if anyone's going to make him crack, it's going to be me.
Oh,
It's like,
and again, I won't spoil any of the specifics, but the tactics that they used were just there was so many different people with so many different approaches that were coming in, and yeah, and then at one point he just says, like, "We got a lot of flack for it." It's like, "Yeah, I bet you did, man." The video footage is damning. Like, it's just
yeah,
yeah.
I'd love to know if any of those officers continued to have jobs after that.
Well, I mean, they're talking about it, like, laughing. They're interviewed in the documentary, and they're talking about it like it was like, "Yeah, we knew it wasn't gonna be a thing, but we thought we could get him." And it was like, I don't know. I don't know. But yeah, it's
Gross.
fascinating. And again, it's ongoing. So,
Sure.
I haven't finished the ones that have been released because, again, like I said, I mean, if the fact it did do me a favor though, because it did motivate me to get going on the cleaning. So that's good.
Yeah. I mean, you did mention to me you were going to do that cleaning at one point. I didn't know if I'm not your mama. I'm not going to be like, you get to that cleaning. I don't, you do you. But I was just waiting for the day that you all of a sudden would send photos of like, oh, here we go. I've gotten in there. And so I was just like, wash my hands of it. Yeah, you do you. Because I understand the absolute stress and anxiety of walking into a space that's full of things that you have to deal with. Because that's how I live my life. Um, so I was like, oh, I know that day's going to come at some point, and I wasn't expecting it today. But what a tickle I got when you were like, "Hey, remember when we were talking about how much stuff you might have here?" And then you sent that photo, and I was like, "God, that is just so much stuff." And then you were like, "Oh, sorry, I just found another box." And it's like, there it is. And I'm like, I wonder what in amongst all of that stuff do I just not want anymore? Like, or what have I purchased, left behind, come back here, and at another point found it somewhere else and bought it because I was like, I don't have that. You
Well,
uh,
I threw out the food items that had expired.
yep.
Yeah.
Ah, geez. Yeah, that
Yep.
makes sense.
Yeah. But listen, if I'm smelling anything, it's a potential Patreon episode where I just hold up each item one by one and I go, keep or sell, keep or trash.
Oh my God. It'll be like the TLC show Clean Sweep,
Yeah.
where you got to go into the space and then you got a box for keep, a box for sell, and a box for trash or whatever they called it.
Yep.
And I was obsessed with that show.
Well, that show could be your life, baby girl.
That show is my life. I just quite often don't it's different when it's you. Like
Yeah.
I want to watch people do this. I want to watch them organize. I want to watch them do all of that. And then when it's like pointed at me and it's like, "Well, it's your turn to do that." The organized part? Yes, please. I would love to do that part. But the like actual like lugging a box over, going
Yeah.
through it, making the decision of like, do I get rid of this thing? Do I? Because it's always shit that I was given from someone where I'm like, oh, I don't want to get rid of it, even though I don't use it, but I don't want to get rid of it because so and so gave it to me. And then it's always with a kid with a what I can't get rid of it now because while one kid's outgrown it, one of the younger ones might get into it later.
Right.
But now I'm at the fucking point where my youngest isn't as young as what he's not a toddler anymore. So now I'm like, when he outgrows stuff, then I'm like, well, I guess I get rid of it. But then I turn into like, well, would my potentially currently not existing, but maybe someday grandchildren might want this? Get it gone.
Yeah.
Don't want.
Yeah.
Stop it. Oh, my brain can't stop. My brain is always like, oh, what if you need this?
Oh, yeah.
You don't.
Oh, do you know how many reusable bags I have? I think honestly, possibly 7,000. Like it's
Yep.
and I'm like, I gotta keep these. They're reusable bags. And then it's like, but you'll never ever use that many reusable bags at one time.
Correct.
I didn't even know I had a bunch of these reusable bags until today.
I mean, and that's the joke is when you start going through stuff and then you're like, I had these already.
Yeah.
I've recently purchased something because I didn't have it and it turns out I've had it all along. Yeah, look, there are so many things that I have in the storage room of my basement that it is such a nightmare that I came up with in the summer what I thought was like what somehow I thought this was going to save me. How? The answer, I was going to get 3 massive totes. The largest totes you've seen in your life.
Like a
Like
like
a big
Rubbermaid ones?
Rubbermaid
Yeah,
kind of, yeah. I'm going to get 3 of them. One for each child because each had has like a bin and that's where I just put the shit that I'm going to save for them. Not all of their like school stuff, but like the stuff that I think they might want. Basically,
right.
when they move out, that's the here's for you, your childhood shit. Make your decisions. The stuff that I feel like they might want and the sentimental things, I save those. Well, of course, they outgrow that bin and suddenly there are multiple bins. So I'm like, get the largest fucking bins you can. Well, I filled the one for the oldest. So now I have to find another thing. And then I almost filled the one for the middle one. And so now I have these incredibly, impossibly large totes stacked up on each other in the middle of the room. So now there's just no space anywhere. So I'm like, how'd that save me? Because the totes that I took off shelves to empty into those bins got filled with other shit and put somewhere else. Like, so I didn't take anything away. So how is this helpful to me?
When I tell you, and I am not exaggerating, my solution to absolutely everything in this house is
Buy a tote?
get another bin.
Yeah. Have you seen those people that have like a garage, however you like me to say it, where they have it's like the big wall is wood and they buy all the same size bins and they just slide them in. Although nothing gets me hotter than that level of organization and all the clearly labeled, it just looks like it all belongs. Oh, I absolutely want to spend so much money on totes that are all the same size that can go on my shelves perfectly to make it look nicer. And it's like, will it though? Or will it be like there's so much space missing because I don't have the professionally built ones that fit the totes?
Well, yeah, because the reality I live in is that I'm like, I'll get another 3 giant Rubbermaid bins, and
Mhm.
that'll solve the problem. No, they're everywhere. My bedroom, Rubbermaids. The spare
Yep.
room, Rubbermaids. The garage, Rubbermaids. Every closet in this home,
Yep.
Rubbermaids.
Yep.
Um, again, not a sponsor, but listen, we'd love to. We'd love to we'd love to push the product because clearly we're both keeping them in business.
I mean, Rubbermaid, if you're interested, I'm willing to post videos. Um, don't know if you saw my 7-Eleven collab or not, but I just feel if I say it like it's a thing, it just feels natural. Um, I'm willing to be like, look at the space before, look at the space after I brought Rubbermaid in. I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to show my shame and show everybody the fucking mess I have in there and the things where I'm like, "Oh, look, there's gonna be something that I pick up like, daintily that I'm like, "Ew, I don't know what this is. We're just gonna get rid of it." Like, I'm willing to basically do a clean sweep. If you wanna even provide just a few bins. I'm not even asking you to give me all the bins because 'cause I've already got so many bins, but
Well,
again,
this
my
is the
instinct
thing.
is always a bin's gonna be
The
that's
bin's gonna
gonna
be the
push
thing
me over the edge.
because it's like that screams organization. If you've got a bin and it's like, "Yeah, but then what?" Again, I went into that room and there was like there was a stack of 4 Rubbermaids,
Mhm.
medium-sized ones,
Ooh.
all of them half empty, which is great because again, then it's easy to kill, but then
Yeah.
I'm going, "I have been living without access to that bedroom for multiple years."
Mhm.
And part of the reason why was because I had half-filled bins. Half full or half empty? Well, depends
Well, and
on depends on how you look at it.
that's the beautiful thing about Rubbermaid is when you can't see into it,
Yeah.
then you're just putting all your shame in there, you know what I mean? Like, put
Yeah.
whatever you want, no one's business, there you go. But
I
I would
bought
love
some
the
clear
life of
ones. I bought
the
some clear
shelves.
ones to store, like, my backpacks in, like, my Disneyland backpacks and
Oh,
stuff like
sure.
that. Because I was like, "If I don't, if I
Then you'll
just
forget
get
what's in there.
then I'll just keep buying them." If
Yeah,
I put them in a box that has no windows,
yeah,
I don't stand a chance.
I get that, I get that. I mean, last year this is Rubbermaid adjacent. Um, Last year oh, no, I guess it was early this year, because I got some, post-holiday sales.
Right.
I got sick and tired of the way Christmas ornaments and my Christmas decorations were stored because it was just a nightmare and it didn't fit anywhere, and I hated bringing it up and unpacking and pack all of this. So I went crazy and bought all of these clearance, I think it's only one layer, like trays that are specifically for ornaments where you can make the little holes however big you want them to be. And I threw out all the boxes for all of the ornaments that I've been toting around for the last 40 years. And I recycled those boxes and nothing made me feel freer.
Well, I want you to know something. I was inspired by that story, and then I thought, if she can do it, I can do it. And so I
Yeah.
got those organizational boxes and I put all of the ornaments in them. And I have not thrown out any of the ornament boxes. I have them in a giant garbage bag sitting in my office because I apparently have an emotional attachment to those boxes. And I'm
Baby
going, once
steps.
I throw them out, I can't get them back. So,
Oh, I absolutely had like a very hard remorse moment where I went, "Oh my god, what have I done?" Like a Job, like
yeah,
a "What
I
have I
made a
done?"
terrible mistake.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I really worried about it there for a minute, but then I was like, "You know what? Let it go. You just gotta get it out. It made your life easier for it to be gone. Here we go."
Yeah.
But now I would like more personalized sizes of totes around, and I bet if I went through things like I guarantee one of the things I know very few things of what are in that storage room, but one of the things in there is a recorder that one of my kids had to have in the 6th grade where
Mm.
they just randomly decided everybody had to play the recorder that year. Spoiler alert, they let the program go and stopped making people play the recorder. So I've
Hmm.
had this fucking recorder in the basement in a storage bin for who knows how long. And I'm like, what am I going to do with that? Get it gone. Like, I just need to go through things and buy more totes. Like, again, I just desperately, desperately want that wall of wood
Yeah.
that I can just slide the bins in. So it's just flat. I can see it all. It's all labeled. I would like to spend an afternoon labeling.
Listen, do you wanna come over here and label all your own stuff?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the fact that I could fill a room in that house, it feels right.
Yeah.
It feels right. It makes sense. Oh god. I would love nothing more than the next time I fly there for Air Canada to be like, "Do you have anything to check in?" I'd be like, "I do, this empty Rubbermaid tote. It'll make sense when I'm on the way home." Just be like, "What? You don't have luggage?" "Nope. I'm going with the clothes on my back. I'm gonna reek for a few days, but" oh, who are we kidding? My carry-on's gonna at least have underwear
Oh, yeah, you could
'cause
put that in the carry-on.
I've gotta do that. But, just a tote. Just an empty tote
You
that I
can
can
check a box on a flight.
huh.
Yeah, I've done it. It has to be certain specifications, certain dimensions
Of
or whatever.
course.
I don't know if you could check
Ah.
all the boxes, but
Oh, I think for so many things, I check all the boxes.
oh, you do for me, baby. You do for me. What you drinking over there?
Oh, I'm doing a Slurpee and a water.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
I've got my giant Stanley weapon of water,
of
and
course.
I've got a guava high noon. And this is a new flavor. Again,
Ooh,
we're not sponsored by these people, but I'd like to be. Um, and it's delicious.
hey.
It's delicious. Yeah. It's also we're also in a heat wave in Los Angeles. Not that
Ugh.
I was like I should mention this. Why? I don't know. It was 111 degrees here, which I
Oh,
believe is about 43 or 44 Celsius.
gross.
Yeah. It's tough. It's
Yeah.
tough. It's
W
tough to not want to leave your house because of the heat.
yes.
Cuz I'm
Yeah.
used to not wanting to leave the house because of the cold. I grew up that way in the
Oh,
winter.
yeah.
But there
Yeah.
is something about it's just so oppressive.
Just a wall of heat.
Like,
Yep.
even when I walked Bean today this morning, so it wasn't the heat of the day yet, which was deliberate because I was like, "I gotta get her
Of
out and
course.
around." And listen, the old man, he ain't going on those walks. His heart can't handle it,
Of
literally. Um,
course.
so I have to rush her out because if he sees, then he gets depressed that he's not coming.
Of course.
Sometimes he doesn't wanna go, but, I was like, "I can't for your safety," but then at the same time, I was like, "She needs to go. She needs to get the exercise because she's young." By the time we got home, she was dragging ass. She was, like, going so slow. She gets into the house,
Oh,
immediately goes to the water bowl, and it's just, like, slurping and slurping, and I'm like, "I get it, girl." Like, it is hot.
yes.
Hot, hot, hot.
Oh, I get that. We have hit that moment where afternoon piping hot, not
Yeah.
as hot as what, you're dealing with, um, but morning, freezing cold. So
Really?
we've now hit that moment where you wake up and it's like, "Oh god, it's now," it's only like I don't know what this is in Fahrenheit, of course, but, it was 4 degrees for them to leave for school in the morning. I was like, "That is cold." By the time they came home, like, 8 hours later, it was high 30s.
What?
Yeah, so we're just in a massive, like, flip-flop. Like, it used to be that it would be, like, super hot, and then suddenly you wake up one morning and it's suddenly, like, cold, but it only gets up to, like, 10 or 12 that day, and then they're just in fall weather, and then it's winter and just a hellscape. But now we're still summer-like weather, but our mornings are freezing cold.
And to translate for the Americans
Thank you
listening,
so much.
4 degrees Celsius is 39 Fahrenheit, and 30 degrees Celsius is 86 Fahrenheit. So quite a jump.
It just
Quite a
feels
jump.
like it's insane. And my youngest, bless his heart, I'm always like, "It's cold, like, you probably don't wanna wear shorts." I'm like, "It'll be warm this afternoon," and he's just like, "Then I'm wearing shorts." 'Cause he's like, he wants to wear shorts for the rest of his life, and when
Mm,
winter comes and he has to wear pants outside, it's gonna break his heart. So
right.
he will put up with a freezing morning if it means just being able to wear shorts.
And that's a very Canadian thing. I feel like a lot of
Yeah.
people will wear shorts, like, past the point of where the rest of the world would draw a line. Like, the
Oh,
rest of the
yeah.
world just like how I feel like in Canada, it's like people will go and drink beers on a patio, like,
Yeah.
in winter coats. Like, it's not what the rest of the world will do.
Oh, yeah. We're just I think for for us, we just know once it hits a point where we don't wanna go outside, it's so cold,
Yeah.
it's gonna be such a long, bleak time before we can see and feel fresh air. You can't
Yeah.
see fresh air, but you knew what I meant.
Well, you
So
can see
we're gonna
smog, so you
thank
can see dirty air.
thank you so much.
You're very
Um,
welcome.
so yeah, we're gonna drag out as long as possible.
Yeah.
And again, get some of that breeze, on our legs. That's all we ask.
Yeah.
I wanna feel air on my legs because I won't now till May, June, if I'm lucky. We'll see. We've had snow at the beginning of June before. Hell.
That should be illegal.
Yeah. Oh, hell. And whatever hell you think the temperature's gonna do in, like, November, December, buckle up because January, February, March is hell.
Yeah.
That's the moment when it gets bad.
Yeah.
I've had
Well,
multiple flights in, like, February, March where my flight's been canceled because of snow or the airport's shut down because of the snow. So that time of year is not a great time
no.
weather-wise in this area.
Well, and in this area, it feels like we're living in hell. Um,
Oh, yeah.
just the surface of the sun. Also,
Ugh.
remember another update. Remember the house that my package got delivered to and
The dick paste or the Airbnb?
the dick paste.
Okay. Yep.
For those of you who didn't listen to that episode or don't remember, a gentleman brought over a package of mine, and he's like, "I'm so sorry, I opened this. I was waiting for a package from Amazon, um, but it's actually for you. It was delivered to the wrong house." And then I was like, "Did he put his dick in this moisturizer?" Anyway, very nice older gentleman. But they sold that house. And then I think I may have I don't know if I've talked about this just to you privately or if I've talked about it on the podcast, but very quickly, the house was getting renovated and there was like a car there with like European plates. And I was like, that's
Oh.
interesting. And then there was like a lot of different activity going on at that house that seemed like I guess normal, but I was also like, I don't know, like I was just like my antenna were up. And so
Sure.
now there's a sign that they're selling, but the house hasn't finished, like they haven't flipped it. They haven't finished renovating it. And they appear to have abandoned it because it's sitting there empty and the lawn has literally turned to straw. It's like light yellow to a cream colored straw. And every time we take the dogs out, my boyfriend and I are like, one match, and this thing is going up so quickly, so quickly.
Yeah.
Um, and it's not I mean, it's troubling. It's troubling because it's
S
close to me. And again, it's like I mean, this is why HOAs, I guess, exist, which I know they're the bane of everyone's existence.
Sure.
And I also am not necessarily saying that I would wanna be one have one, but this, I was like, I wish there was something that we could do, like, as a community. I sound so old. Um,
Mhm.
but because this is starting to feel like a safety factor, you know?
Yes. Oh, I mean, at this point, I'm like, does the neighborhood rally together and everyone secretly waters that lawn like a few times a week?
Right. Yeah.
That's
I mean, I think
yeah.
the thing for me is that I convinced myself that the people who bought the house were spies, and I have absolutely nothing to base it on. But I'm convinced they're spies, and now I'm also concerned about, like, why did their mission get so abruptly interrupted? Like, why are they gone now? The car with the European being plates? Gone. The guys I was seeing there? Gone. There's no one around, but someone's taking the garbage out every week.
Interesting.
Yeah. So you're taking the garbage out, but you're not thinking about, I don't know, doing something about the lawn? I don't know who they think is gonna buy this house. It's half gutted. They've ripped out
Mm.
windows, they've half replaced them. The lawn's a mess. Like, I don't know what was gained by this, unless, of course, this was some sort of cover for some sort of international spy organization. And those are the things that keep me up at night.
Of course, and all I can think of is you say the place was gutted, and I'm like, "Oh god, I guess I'm buying a house close to yours just to store all my shit."
Oh my god, listen, it would be an honor. Um, On that note, let's get into the case.
Yeah.
I am very excited about this episode. It's, of course, Johnny Stompanato, which is a name that we've been throwing around on our Patreon polls for quite some time.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, he was on an early
he
poll,
was on an
yeah.
early one. This is, of course, our July's patrons poll pick. If you haven't, go over to patreon.com/ true crime and cocktails to learn more about our subscription based service over there, where you can vote for one of the episodes we cover on the main feed per month. We're catching up on those now. So, again, this is the choice from July. And I don't know anything about this. I just read the first two words of the synopsis and I could not be more excited. So, let's just get into it. I'll give you some background right now.
Mhm.
Picture it. Hollywood, 1950s. Glitz, glamour, starlets, mobsters, and a wannabe named Johnny Stompanato who dreamed of becoming a big time producer. Unfortunately for Johnny, he was nothing more than a two-bit thug who worked for notorious crime boss Mickey Cohen. Johnny was a lackey who ran errands, laundered money, and even conned his way into the personal lives of famous women just so that he could blackmail them. Little did Johnny know, but those con jobs ultimately led to his death at the age of 32. So, what happened to Johnny Stompanato? What famous women did he screw over? And did Johnny eventually pay for his wicked ways? Christy Oxborrow investigates. Anytime she writes a beat into a script, I could not be happier.
I want you to know it was completely different the first time I wrote it. And then I was like, the further and the deeper I got into, like, 1950s Hollywood, my brain was like, "I have to change this completely."
I love it.
Because the poll was technically, a case dealing with an actor.
Right.
And so I was like, "Well, this one heavily features an actress." So I was like, "We're just gonna go for it." And I didn't know as much about it, but, I think I really went off the rails here. So
Well, we're living for it.
it's gonna be what it's gonna be. Oi. So, disclaimer. This episode will contain mentions of domestic violence, suicide, and sexual assault, so trigger warning for those who need it. Giovanni Stompanato, known as John, and Carmela Truppa were both born in Italy in 1890. They immigrated separately to the United States, where they officially met while living in Brooklyn, New York. They got married in 1910 when they were both 20 and moved to the Midwest, where John opened a barber shop in Woodstock, Illinois. They had 3 children in the first 2 years of their marriage,
Oh, boy.
including daughters Grace and Teresa, and a son named Carmine. 13 years later, on October 19th, 1925, they welcomed a fourth child, a son named John Stompanato Jr., also known as Johnny. The child was born via C section, and sadly, just 6 days later, Carmela died of perion- peritonitis, which is an inflammation of the abdomen. Carmela was just 35 at the time of her death. A local paper described her as, quote, the favorite Italian mother of Woodstock.
Wow.
John Sr. remarried in 1929 to a woman named Verena, and hopefully that woman was a saint because young Johnny was an absolute handful.
I
It,
bet.
it was said that while Johnny was a nice kid, he just kind of gravitated towards trouble. Things escalated to the point where when Johnny was just 15, his father sent him to Kemper Military Academy in Boonville, Missouri. Rumor has it, John Sr. was pushed to the decision because Johnny had recently impregnated at least 2 different girls.
Wowzer.
Yeah. Hollywood fun fact.
Love it.
Johnny's roommate at Kemper was a boy named Hugh Cramp, who would later be known in Hollywood as actor Hugh O'Brien. Throughout his career, he appeared in random episodes of LA Law, Murder She Wrote, Fantasy Island, The Love Boat, Perry Mason, and Charlie's Angels. He also had a part in the 1988 cinematic classic Twins, which is something I love so much, but I don't think people talk about enough. But Hugh O'Brien is easily most known for playing the title character in the TV series The Life and Legend of Wyatt Earp. The
Ah,
show ran from 1955 to 1961. Johnny Stompanato graduated from military school and joined the Marine Corps. Hugh Cramp did the same and became the youngest drill instructor in Kemper history.
wow.
Does anybody care? No, but it's a fun fact you didn't know before now, and we're going to call that a win.
And that's what we bring to the table, folks.
100%. Johnny was stationed in China, where he spent most of his enlisted time as a clerk. However, he was forced into combat when his battalion invaded the Pacific island of, oh shit, um, Pelalu? Pelalu. There we go. The Pacific island of Pelalu during World War II. Johnny discharged from the Marines in March 1946, but opted to stay in China, likely because he met 25-year-old Sarah Udish 2 years prior. They were married in May 1946 before moving to the United States. But when filling out paperwork prior to leaving, Sarah noticed that Johnny listed his age as 20, which surprised her because he told her he was 25. But since they were already married, she just ignored the little white lie. To be clear, Johnny absolutely was 20. At the time, he
Okay.
just told her he was 25. Uh, Johnny and Sarah moved to Woodstock, Illinois, where Johnny drove a bread truck and worked part time at an auto parts factory. Sarah soon got pregnant and they welcomed a son, John Stompanato III, in September 1947. But shortly after the child's birth, Johnny suddenly was super bored with small town life, so he moved to Los Angeles, California, leaving his wife and newborn son behind.
Oh boy. Okay.
Sarah later said of Johnny, quote, "He had a good heart, but he just never grew up," which is a lot kinder than I would have been in that situation. She later filed for divorce on the grounds of desertion. So Johnny sets his sights on Hollywood with the dream of being a big producer and schmoozing with the Hollywood elite. But Johnny quickly learned he was a nobody with no connections, so he kind of had to start at the bottom. He used his looks and his charm to try and befriend people. He literally would just buy a magazine and go to a place that had a pool, sit poolside, reading magazines, and just waiting for people to like literally come up to him. Um, and somehow that actually worked. uh,
Yeah. I was going to say, sounds like a really solid plan, actually.
yeah. Merv Griffin allegedly propositioned propositioned Johnny and became a weekly customer. It was also rumored that Liberace would pay Johnny as much as $1,000 for a single night together.
Oh,
Yep.
I'm sorry.
Yep, we'll get there.
I thought we were talking about business. Okay. Got it.
Johnny said that while he loved women, he was willing to sleep with men if it helped him pay his dues.
Okay.
Yeah. Eventually, Johnny grew tired of it all and attempted to find a new inn. And while no one has ever been able to explain exactly how it happened, Johnny soon became friends with notorious crime boss Mickey Cohen.
Mm.
Watch out for cookies because it's a crime boss side note.
Ooh.
Now, we do not have time to get into a full deep dive on Mickey Cohen because that guy could be an entire episode himself. The FBI's file on Mickey Cohen is more than 400 pages long. So,
Wowza.
we're just gonna go through the basics to give you an idea as to who we're dealing with here. Mickey was born in New York in 1913. His older brothers taught Mickey how to bootleg alcohol during Prohibition. And because of it, Mickey was arrested for the first time when he was just 9 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. Mickey later said, and this is a quote, "I was making gin the way I was taught to make it when the Prohibition coppers caught me. It was the first time I ever got in a beef with the coppers, So when one of them reached for the still, I kind of got peeved and hit him with a plate of hot food.
Whoa.
2 coppers and a peeved. Couldn't be happier.
Yeah.
Couldn't be happier. So 9-year-old Mickey was charged with bootlegging, but the case was eventually thrown out, probably because of Mickey's very young age. In his teens, Mickey traveled to Los Angeles, where he trained as a professional boxer. He then moved to Chicago, where he got involved with organized crime, starting by working for the one and only Al Capone. While Capone was in prison for tax evasion, Mickey put together his own crew, and when an armed robbery went wrong, Mickey fled town and ended up back in Los Angeles, where he teamed up with mobster Bugsy Siegel.
Oh.
In the late 30s and early 40s, their operation had grown to include drugs, prostitution, and gambling. They also controlled most labor unions and were said to be feared by the people of Los Angeles. When Bugsy was murdered in 1947, Mickey took over, but since he lacked the same skills as Bugsy, Mickey had to hire a tutor to teach him to read and write. He also hired someone to teach him proper manners so he could rub elbows with the Hollywood elite. And sure enough, it must have worked because Mickey became friends with so many celebrities. For example, Dean Martin, Jerry Lewis, Robert Mitchum, and Frank Sinatra.
Mm.
In 1951, Mickey was sent to prison for tax evasion, just like his first boss, Al Capone. Mickey was released in 1955, where he went right back to running his crime syndicate. He was sent to prison for tax evasion again in 1961, but this time he was sent away for 15 years. While in prison in Georgia, he was beaten so badly, he was left partially paralyzed for the
Oh my
rest of his life.
God. Jesus.
In 1974, Mickey offered to help Randolph and Catherine Hearst get their daughter Patty back after she was kidnapped by members of the Symbionese Liberation Army. Her parents declined Mickey's help after Mickey told them his plan might involve some sort of shootout,
Wow.
which is just, I mean, can you imagine someone being like, my child is taken, and someone coming in and going, I'll help. There might be some gunfire. It's like, do we
There
have
might be a
another?
firefight. Yeah.
Yeah, do we have another plan there, Mick? No? But for more information on Patty Hearst, check out episode 137. Huh. So it's unsure of how Johnny Stompanato became acquainted with Mickey Cohen, but in the summer of 1949, Johnny was a regular in Mickey's entourage. People, a lot of people online say he was like the bodyguard, but according to Mickey, he, Johnny won't no bodyguard. You know what I mean?
There's Cook for you.
Johnny ain't got no stomach for shit like that.
Yeah, I get it. I get
Again,
it, Cooks.
again, I it came so alive during this episode. It just is what it is.
I
So
love it.
we've barely scratched the surface. Mickey later said that Johnny was like a kid brother to him. He used Johnny as a lackey, so he like ran errands. He also picked up protection money from businesses because, of course, that was a big thing. Make them pay you so they don't get robbed by your men, which, you know, classic Cook, if I may,
Absolutely.
you know. So, as a member of a criminal enterprise, it should come as no surprise that throughout the 1950s, Johnny was arrested 7 times for charges ranging from vagrancy to suspicion of robbery. But maybe thanks to his connections, never did a lick of jail time. Don't know why I had to say a lick. I, I'm not in control of myself any longer.
Of course not.
So at some point, Johnny tells Mickey that he dreams of being part of the Hollywood elite, wants so badly to be a producer. I love that that was his only goal. He didn't want to direct, he didn't want to be in the pictures, he
Yeah.
wanted to produce specifically. So Mickey thought, well, shit, if we can get him in as like a Hollywood person, that just opens up so many more advantages for us. So Mickey comes up with a plan for Johnny to seduce actresses who were either well known or people who were like on their way up in the biz. Johnny would then film or photograph these women in compromising positions and then blackmail them to save their reputations and therefore their careers.
Ugh.
Yeah. One of his rumored victims was Lucille Ball.
No.
Yeah, which that's a low blow, sir. But Johnny didn't just focus on women. He went after anyone that he felt he could use. Other alleged victims of this blackmail scheme included Spencer Tracy, Cary Grant, Fred Astaire, and Rock Hudson. So, what I like was Mickey was like, "Hey, find these broads, seduce them, get some coin out of them, and then fucking bail." And he was like, "I'll do you one better. It's not just gonna be women. I'm just gonna go after whoever is willing to come get the nectar." I don't know what I was trying to do there.
Come get the nectar. Wow,
Yeah, I don't
okay.
know. I don't know what
When
that was.
Blanche and Cookies meld, does that make you, lookies?
Oh, sure. I would even accept Blanchies because that's probably what I would call my cookie company, which is really a front.
Of course.
This is bigger than me. So, while Johnny and Mickey were making money off this scheme, Johnny didn't want the relationships to be secret because he realized if he's going to be somebody in Hollywood, he needs to start being seen in public on the arm of famous women for the sake of boosting his career.
Right.
So, Mickey then suggests Johnny seduce actresses under the guise of having a relationship with them so that Johnny could not only use the women for their money, but also use them for their fame so he could get noticed by the right people. It goes without saying that these men were full trash.
Yeah.
I mean, they were already trash by blackmailing people, but to fake a relationship with someone is beyond gross. And again, just fucking trash.
Yeah.
So in 1949, Johnny seduced his way into the life of Helen Gilbert, who was best known for her appearances in The Falcon Takes Over and Andy Hardy Gets Spring Fever. I kind of miss old-timey movie titles.
Oh, yeah.
Fun coincidence, she was also in an episode of The Life and Legend of Wyatt Earp, which is only fun trivia if you remember me mentioning it moments ago in the show. If you don't remember, that's okay. It wasn't a test. You're doing great. But what else is fun is the Hollywood fun fact that Helen was the first choice to play Glinda the Good Witch in The Wizard of Oz.
Ah.
The role did eventually go to actress Billy Burke, not to be confused with the handsome gentleman of the same name who played Bella's father in Twilight. So just know that.
She's an encyclopedia, folks.
Yeah. Well, it's Billy Burke. I got another. I mean, when you're young and you see Twilight, you're like, "Oh my god, Edward and Jacob." And then you become a woman and you're like, "Hello, dad." Billy Burke was where it was at. Not the point. Point is, dad. So, when Johnny and Helen met, Helen was 34. Johnny was 23. He lied and claimed he was older because an older woman with a younger man was very taboo at the time in Hollywood. Not unheard of. It's just not something that was very open in Hollywood at the time. I mean, good God, now they freak out about it still. So,
Yeah.
you know. So Helen and Johnny quickly got married. But then 3 months later, Helen filed for divorce, saying that their marriage had been a mistake. I guess Helen was on to Johnny's scheme a lot quicker than he'd like. Johnny then set his sights on Janet Leigh, best known for her roles in The Manchurian Candidate and Psycho. Janet, of course, is also the mother of my birthday buddy, Jamie Lee Curtis.
Thank you.
In 1950, Johnny started love bombing Janet. He sent her so many bouquets of flowers. He sent her vinyl records of artists that she liked, even though she never told him that she liked certain artists. They never actually had a conversation. He just sent her favorite stuff and just really hard love bombed her from afar. He wore her down enough that he finally got a date, but on that date, he admitted to having connections to the mob, and boss Janet sent that man fucking packing.
Good for her.
Good for her. Also, because if that had worked out, I wouldn't have Jamie Lee.
Yeah.
I still don't. Like, I don't know why I'm saying I have her. I have no connection to her, with exception to we share a birthday. So, Johnny then quickly moves on to Helene Stanley, best known for her roles in The Asphalt Jungle and Davy Crockett, King of the Wild Frontier. I feel like I'm singing the song when it's the full title. Hollywood fun fact, because I won't stop with those in this episode, Helene was the live model that Disney animators used to create Cinderella in 1950, Sleeping Beauty in 1959, and Anita in 101 Dalmatians in 1961.
Wow.
Helene also voiced the poodle owner in 101 Dalmatians, which was her final movie before she left Hollywood to raise a family.
Huh.
And for those who may ask, how was Johnny even able to get near these women in the first place? Well, I mean, he was ridiculously charming. I love that this made it to my notes. And according to rumors, Johnny was given the nickname Oscar because his penis was the size of an Academy Award.
Wowzer. Okay.
Yeah. And somehow, that was not the only rumor about a man's penis that came up during my research. Ava Gardner, who had a very tumultuous relationship with Frank Sinatra, um, she was once asked why she stayed with Frank as long as she did. She very coolly responded, quote, "He's 119 pounds and 19 pounds is cock." I've never loved a woman more. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like that, I couldn't love it. Um, Frank and Ava were married for 6 years, but before they officially married, Johnny attempted to get near Ava, and Frank went directly to Mickey Cohen and told him keep his lackey away from his woman.
Wow.
Not surprisingly, Johnny backed off. Thing
Yeah.
is, Frank was married to someone else at the time. He just wanted Ava for himself.
Gross.
He then, of course, left his wife for Ava, but you know, still. So
Still.
Mickey then chose Johnny's next mark, and that is the one and only actress, Lana Turner. Lana had been recently dropped by MGM, so Mickey believed that meant Lana would be vulnerable and more willing to do whatever necessary to protect her reputation. So the plan was for Johnny to stage some sort of threesome, get photos, and then blackmail Lana for everything she had. Again, these men were trash. But before we're going to get into their scheme and how it worked, we're going to do a quick trip into Lana's past.
Ooh.
Julia Jean Turner was born February 8th, 1921, in Wallace, Idaho. She later chose the stage name Lana, so to spare any confusion, I'm just going to keep referring to her by her stage name. Lana's parents, Virgil and Mildred, met at a town dance when Virgil was 24 and Mildred was 15. The pair
Oh.
were quickly married, and 2 years later, Lana was born. The marriage was not a happy one. It was said that Mildred called her husband Mr. Turner and never once called him by his first name, which really sets a tone for what
Yeah.
that marriage was like. After 11 years, they decided to separate. At the time, they struggled to make ends meet. So Lana was living in a foster home in Modesto, California, while Virgil and Mildred lived in San Francisco. On December 14th, 1930, Virgil attended a craps game in a warehouse in the Slaughterhouse District around 2:30 a.m. He won big, but on his way out, he was struck in the head with a heavy object. It is believed the blow triggered a cerebral hemorrhage. His body was found hours later at 7 a.m. He was in a seated position, propped against the warehouse, and at first he appeared to just be sleeping. There was no sign of a struggle and no other injuries to his body. But Virgil's left shoe had been removed and his sock was missing. Mildred said it was common for Virgil to hide extra money in his left sock. So
Interesting.
someone obviously knew about it.
Right.
Virgil Turner was 34 at the time of his death. As of this record, his murder's never been solved.
Interesting.
So Lana's foster mother, Julia, brought Lana to San Francisco to attend Virgil's funeral. However, Julia didn't bother to tell Lana, who was just 9 years old at the time, that her father was dead. She just thought they were going on a trip. So Lana learned the truth when she was taken to a room and shown her father's casket,
Oh my god.
which, is horrifying, as is the fact that Lana suffered terrible abuse at that foster home. Once her mother learned about what was actually happening to Lana at the time, she immediately removed her from the foster home and then cared for her the rest of her life. In 1936, Lana and her mother moved to Los Angeles. In October of that year, 15-year-old Lana cut class to go across the street to Curry's ice cream parlor to have a 5-cent Coke. While there, Billy Wilkerson, the publisher of The Hollywood Reporter, saw Lana and was struck by her beauty, so he immediately asked her, is she interested in being in the pictures? Billy got Lana a meeting with a producer who asked her age. Lana said 15. The producer said, if anyone asks, you're 18.
Great.
Yeah. Lana was introduced to a talent agent, and in February 1937, she signed her first movie contract. Director, I don't know how to say this right, but Mervyn Leroy, told Lana her name was too plain, so they went through a baby name book and chose the name Lana at random. Now, we don't have time to do a full in depth on Lana's nearly 60 credit career. Her most notable work was Ziegfeld Girl in 1941, The Postman Always Rings Twice in 1946, Peyton Place in 1957, and The Imitation of Life in 1959. True crime fun fact, after seeing The Postman Always Rings Twice, a woman named Gladys Broadhurst was inspired to ask her young lover to kill her husband. For more on that, check out episode 148.
Yes.
Hollywood fun fact, Lana Turner screen tested for the role of Scarlett in Gone with the Wind.
Interesting.
So, Lana was dubbed Hollywood's sweater girl because she was known for wearing very form fitting sweaters that accentuated her bust. Jane Russell and Jane Mansfield are other examples of Hollywood sweater girls. I mean, judging a woman based solely on her appearance is garbage to begin with. But especially when we're talking about outfits and costumes they were put in by movie studios,
Yeah.
outfits that had nothing to do with their choice. But still, the worst part is police complained about sweater girls, um, and what they called the sweater girl movement because they claimed the sweater girl movement was responsible for the increase in sex crimes.
Oh,
I do not have time to complain about how gross that is,
yeah.
but just know I'm fuming inside. So, just to give you an idea as to the bullshit that Lana had to put up with during her career. In 1938, during filming of For's a Crowd, she was molested by actor Errol Flynn in his dressing room. Lana was 16 at the time, Errol was 28.
Gross.
So it shouldn't come as a surprise when in 1942, two girls aged 15 and 17 accused Errol of statutory rape. The jury unfortunately fell for Errol's hype and found him not guilty. Errol then continued his career like nothing happened. Apparently, the word of the day is trash.
Yeah.
That same year of the Errol assault, studio execs ordered Lana, who again was 16 years old, to escort 26-year-old Ronald Reagan to the premiere of the movie Jezebel. Reagan had just signed a 7-year contract with Warner Brothers, and they wanted him seen on the arm of a beautiful woman. Barf. Reagan appeared in 53 films between 1937 and 1964. He then left the biz and set his sights on politics. He was governor of California from 67 to 75, and of course, president of the United States from 81 to 89. We don't have time to get into more about Reagan, but the studio execs forced Lana to be Reagan's arm candy at that premiere. The next day, that fucking prick had the audacity to tell his friends, quote, "Lana is just as oversexed as I am. She was one of my greatest conquests, a flamboyant feather in my cap."
Disgusting.
Just pure trash. Trash. Mm.
Trash.
And sadly, Lana's personal life was as full of trash as her professional one. In 1940, when she was 19, Lana met 28-year-old Artie Shaw on set. He was some famous clarinetist and swing band leader. On their first date, they got a tad carried away and flew to Vegas and got married, which is incredibly awkward because just 3 days earlier, Artie had proposed to Betty Grable.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Artie turned out to be an asshole, big shocker, who physically and mentally abused Lana. Like the time she made him dinner, even though she'd never really cooked in her life. And he told her it was awful and he threw it on the ground and then forced her to clean it up.
Ugh.
When Lana started crying about it, Artie had a doctor come over and give Lana sedatives without her consent. And when she passed out, they put her in the hospital and told the hospital she tried to take her own life.
Oh my god.
Lana managed to escape the relationship soon after and had a lawyer friend file for divorce on her behalf. Following the divorce, Lana had a nervous breakdown.
Yeah.
Lana's friend Ava Gardner was briefly married to Artie in 1945. She said Artie was extremely emotionally abusive and controlling. Artie was married a total of 8 times. Most lasted less than a year. 2 of those marriages ended up getting annulled.
Mm.
In 1942, Lana met Steve Crane at a nightclub. He claimed to be the heir to a tobacco fortune. The truth? Steve's father managed a cigar store in a pool hall in Indiana.
Top.
But Steve was charming, and 3 weeks into their relationship, they eloped in Vegas. And the first 5 weeks were apparently bliss. And then Lana learned that Steve was already legally married. Apparently, Steve and his first wife were working through a divorce, but there was a stipulation that he was not allowed to remarry for at least a year following them separating.
Right.
And while Lana's instinct was to walk away, she soon discovered she was pregnant. So she went to talk to Steve's ex wife and asked her if she could remove the stipulation, but also kind of try and be hush hush about the situation for the sake of Lana's career. The woman agreed to do it, but said she'd only do it for 5 grand, which is equivalent to about $96,000 in 2024. And then after getting the money, that fucking bitch ran to the press and told them everything. So see that, kids?
No.
Women can be trash too.
Yeah. Yeah. For real. Jesus.
So the studio demanded that Lana and Steve remarry because they were not going to have her pregnant and single. Not in, 1940s
Yeah.
Hollywood. Lana refused. Steve then made several attempts on his own life before Lana finally agreed to take him back. They got married, legally this time, in a lawyer's office in Tijuana in
Oh
February
boy.
1943. On July 25th, Lana went into labor, but while at the hospital, Steve just got kind of bored, so he left to go watch a boxing match while his daughter Cheryl Christina Crane was born. Steve then started gambling heavily. He started having an affair with Bugsy Siegel's mistress.
Feels like a bad move.
Yep. When Lana learned about the affair, she filed for divorce. Lana married twice more between 1948 and 1953, both times to men who turned out to be absolute trash. The first became physically abusive a few years into the marriage, and the second became sexually abusive towards Lana's then 10-year-old daughter.
Oh no.
In 1957, Lana found herself lonely and divorced for the fifth time. She said, quote, "I'm lonely unless I have someone to love," which I'm sure stems from the death of her father and the fact that she was raised in an abusive foster home. I'm not the profiler here. I'm just saying what I see. So, in total, between 1940 and 1969, Lana Turner married 8 times, including twice to Steve Crane. Hollywood fun fact: Lana had a brief relationship with Robert Stack.
Interesting.
Honestly, I love that for them.
Yeah.
I really, really do. But the relationship that we are obviously the most interested in is the one that Lana had between marriages 5 and 6. In April 1957, while working on the movie The Lady Takes a Flyer, Lana received a phone call from a man named John Steele. Since Lana did not know who that was, she refused to take the call. The man called repeatedly and until finally she was willing to talk to him, and he said, "Look, I'm just trying to find a way to send you flowers." Lana was flattered. Soon that man filled her dressing room with flowers. The card was simply signed John Steele with his phone number. John continued to send flowers as well as vinyl records of Lana's favorite artists, although she didn't know how he knew that information. Eventually, Lana gave John her home phone number, but instead of using it, John simply showed up at Lana's apartment instead. And while Lana was wary of him, John was charming and seemed genuine. They started seeing each other, but after Lana and John were photographed in public together, Lana's friend and former co star Mickey Rooney went to her home and was like, "Heads up, I don't know the name John Steele, but John Steele is Johnny Stompanato and he works for fucking Mickey Cohen." Well, Lana realized, well, the flowers that he sent to me at the beginning of this love bombing all came from a flower shop that is owned by Mickey Cohen, who I think was using it to launder money.
Of course.
So when Lana learns this, she ends the relationship. She's like, "Johnny, you gotta go." But Johnny wasn't going to quit. He called Lana so often, she had to just take the phone off the hook because she couldn't stand it. And one night, he climbed the fire escape outside her building, forced his way into her apartment, and tried to smother her with a pillow.
Oh my god.
Why? Oh, God, your guess is as good as mine. But despite the behavior, I, Johnny was actually falling in love with Lana to the point where he ended another relationship he was having at the same time, to be specifically with her. At the time, Johnny was seeing a woman named Rosemary, who was married to a rich doctor. Rosemary later denied that relationship, but at the time of Johnny's death, a gold ring was found in his apartment. It was inscribed, "From here to eternity, Rosemary and John."
Well, that says
It was
there's probably something to it.
Yeah, it was allegedly a gift from Rosemary, who also shared 3 separate bank accounts with Johnny, including one that had $25,000 in it, which is like 280,000 in 2024. Before breaking up with her, he just conveniently wrote himself a check to clear that entire amount out and, make it payable to himself. He did use some of that money to commission an artist to paint a full-length portrait of Lana Turner.
Wow.
Yeah. Lana eventually took Johnny back, but the relationship was tumultuous at best. Johnny went to visit Lana when she was shooting a movie in England. He brought along 2 movie scripts that he hoped Lana would help him get made because, again, desperately trying to use Lana's influence to become a producer. Why he had his sights set so hard on producer, I'll never know. But
Yeah, it's fascinating.
he pushed, Lana said no. Johnny then accused Lana of having an affair with her co star, Sean Connery,
Oh,
and a young Sean Connery
of
at
course.
that. And then Johnny strangled Lana so hard that he strained her vocal cords and it like prolonged shooting. A maid who happened to be in the room at the time had to physically pull Johnny off of Lana. When Lana threatened to call the police, Johnny told her he only got angry because he loves her so much, which is classic abuser talk.
Yeah.
Like the time he told her, quote, "If I don't have you, I have nothing to live for."
Wow.
Johnny then threatened to kill Lana's mother and her daughter.
Oh my god.
Lana had Johnny banned from the set, but he managed to show up anyway. He pulled out a gun, pointed it at Sean Connery, who did not even flinch. He grabbed Johnny's wrist, twisted it, gets the gun free, and then fucking clocks Johnny in the face. Scotland Yard was brought in to escort Johnny to the airport. He was deported immediately.
I bet he was.
Yeah. When filming ended, Lana wasn't ready to return to California to face Johnny, so she decided to go to Mexico for a vacation. She told Johnny she was going, but didn't tell him when or specifically where. When Lana landed in Denmark on her way to Mexico, Johnny was there to greet her. He had also set up a full press conference in the terminal, almost as though he knew with cameras around, Lana might pretend to be happy to see him. Johnny then followed Lana to Mexico, where they stayed for nearly 3 months. During the trip, Johnny broke down the door to their hotel room, saying, quote, "You know better than to lock doors on me." One night, he pointed a gun at her and told her, quote, "You know in your blood I'm never going to let you go."
Jesus.
Around this time, Lana was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Actress for Peyton Place, and kudos to her because Lana immediately told Johnny he was absolutely not accompanying her to the Oscars. She said she was taking her mother and her daughter instead, and that was it. The awards were held on March 26th. Unfortunately, Lana lost to Joanne Woodward, and even worse was when Lana returned home, she found Johnny waiting for her in her bedroom. Just sitting in the dark, being a full fucking creep. Lana told Johnny to leave. He refused. He slapped her, punched her in the face, broke a lamp, and ripped the closet door off its hinges. And despite the repeated abuse that she suffered, Lana refused to go to the police because she feared bad publicity. And while that may not sound reasonable to some, at that point, bad publicity was enough to just end your career. A week after the Oscars, Lana moved into a new house at 730 North Bedford Drive. Days later, on April 4th, Lana and Johnny were shopping for new dishes when they randomly ran into a man who went to Kemper Military Academy with Johnny 17 years prior. And this was the moment Lana learned that Johnny was actually 32 years old, even though he had told her he was 43.
Whoa.
Yeah. At the time, Lana was 37, so she was furious. Not just because Johnny had lied to her, but because back then, a famous woman being older than her partner was a huge scandal. Johnny responded to Lana's anger by threatening to cut her face and ruin her career.
Jesus.
He told her, quote, "Don't fuck with me or you'll live to regret it." He then called her a cunt and threatened to kill her, her mother, and her daughter, saying, and I quote, "I'll mutilate all three of you bitches."
Jesus.
The entire argument was within earshot of Lana's 14-year-old daughter, Cheryl, and somehow, without either of them noticing, Cheryl entered the room with a kitchen knife and Johnny was stabbed once in the abdomen. The wound hit a vertebrae, cut one of his kidneys, and punctured his aorta. Johnny dropped to the floor. Lana immediately called her mother, which I love that that was her first call. Then she called a doctor. When the doctor arrived, he said there was no pulse. Lana then called Cheryl's father, Steve Crane, and a well known defense attorney named Jerry Geisler. Hollywood fun fact: Jerry is the same lawyer who defended Errol Flynn on those statutory rape charges. He's also a lawyer for Robert Mitchum and Charlie Chaplin. So that's something. The police were called 120 minutes later.
Wow.
When they arrived, they said there was little to no blood on the floor, and the bedroom walls were damp and looked recently washed. The top blanket was missing from Lana's bed and was just never found. The 8-inch kitchen knife was found on the sink in the ensuite bathroom. The handle had been wiped of any prints. The towels from the bathroom were missing, and it looked as though the body had been moved. Johnny Stompanato was 32 at the time of his death.
Wow.
The police were told that 14-year-old Cheryl overheard an argument between her mother and Johnny in which Johnny threatened to kill her mother. So Cheryl went to the kitchen, grabbed a knife with the intention of just scaring Johnny. Then she went to her mother's room, banged on the door, yelled at Johnny to stop. She forced her way into the room, and as she walked in, Johnny ran towards her with his arm in the air like he was going to hit her, and he kind of just walked right into the knife, impaling himself.
Mhm.
Lana told police that she'd been trying to break things off with Johnny since December, and she said she was afraid of him. Cheryl was taken to the police station where she spent the night in a cell before being transferred to juvenile hall. Due to the high profile nature of the case, a coroner's inquest was held almost immediately. The courtroom was open to the public, so there were more than 100 reporters present at the time. Lana Turner took the stand. She said she planned to end the relationship with Johnny that night. When asked what happened when she told him it was over, Lana said, quote, "He grabbed my arm and Mr. Stompanato started shaking me and cursing badly and saying, as he told me before, no matter what I did or how I tried to get away, he wouldn't let me." She added that he had also threatened to cut her face, kill her mother, and kill her daughter. Lana said that Johnny went into her closet, grabbed a hanger, and raised it towards her as though he was going to hit her with it. She told him she was done with the relationship. He needed to leave. Lana turned towards the bedroom door with Johnny right before her daughter Cheryl came in. Lana said it all happened so fast, and Cheryl approached Johnny, and suddenly Johnny was grabbing his stomach and he fell to the ground. Lana said she didn't even see the knife. She didn't even see the wound until she like lifted his shirt when he was on the ground. Lana said she grabbed 2 wet washcloths, placed one on Johnny's forehead and the other on his wound. Lana said Cheryl told her, quote, "Mommy, I didn't mean to do it." Lana said when the police arrived, she asked if they could hold her responsible instead of her daughter, but the police refused to do that. Mhm.
Mhm.
Now, at this point in Lana's testimony, a random man in the crowd, like trench coat, sunglasses, full deal, shakes his fist, stands up, and screams that Lana's lying. The man claims that Lana and Cheryl were both in love with Johnny and he died because he got between them.
Oh, boy.
This man claims that Johnny was trying to break up with Lana, and Lana was the one who refused to let go, which absolutely coincides with the whole story of him refusing to leave the movie set she was on
Right.
and all of that. The man described Johnny as, quote, a fine gentleman. To that, I say, try telling that to the wife and son that Johnny abandoned. Um, the same two people who did not go to Johnny's funeral. So,
Right.
fine gentleman, my ass. Um, it should be no surprise that this mystery man was hired by Mickey Cohen to try and make Lana appear guilty at the time. But we all know that Johnny wasn't a good person. There are multiple people who witnessed his verbal and physical abuse, not to mention the fact that after his death, police found a box of incriminating negatives in Johnny's apartment. The negatives were all of the evidence of Johnny's previous blackmail schemes. There's also the fact that in the beginning of his relationship with Lana, Johnny drugged her and took naked photos of her when she passed out.
Ugh.
From the sounds of it, the guy always seemed to be a real prick towards women. But based on a photo following his time in the Marines, I think that was the moment in his life he turned violent.
Mm.
There is a darkness in his eyes in that photo that is chilling. Um, so no, I don't believe Johnny was a fine gentleman. Although I also don't believe that Cheryl was the one to stab Johnny, especially when Lana said Johnny was stabbed at the door of her bedroom and immediately fell down. Uh, but according to the crime scene photos, which for some reason were published everywhere, Johnny's body was at the far side of the bedroom, so far from the door. So, I mean, I'm no expert or crime scene analyst, but I smell a lie.
Yeah.
Lana cried throughout her entire testimony, causing many reporters to say it was the best performance of her life.
Mm.
After 4 hours of testimony, the jury deliberated for 25 minutes and officially ruled Johnny Stompanato's death justifiable homicide because they felt that Cheryl believed her mother's life was in danger. The final vote was 10 to 2. On April 24th, a hearing was done to go over the evidence a second time and to determine where Cheryl would live once she was released. While both of her parents were fighting over custody, the judge asked Cheryl who she would prefer to live with. She said her grandmother, Lana's mother. The judge determined that Cheryl would not be criminally charged for Johnny's death, but she would remain a ward of the state of California until she was 18, at which time she would be released into the custody of her grandmother. The judge also decided that Cheryl's parents would only be allowed to visit their daughter once a week. Cheryl, who described her parents as vain, gifted, selfish, and wild, said that she had a painfully lonely childhood and that the abuse she suffered from her mother's fifth husband, actor Lex Barker, was likely what led to the events of Johnny's death. Cheryl did admit that once Lana learned about the abuse, she held a gun to Barker's head and told him to get out.
Mm.
After being released from juvenile hall, Cheryl ran away numerous times. She attempted to take her own life once. She went through multiple reformatories. She spent time in a psychiatric hospital. According to Cheryl, by the age of 21, she had survived 3 institutions, 7 schools, 6 governesses, 14 homes, and 5 step parents. Quote, I really did feel like an old broad.
Yeah.
Um, Not to make light, but I'd like broad to be used more often.
Yeah.
I'd like to refer to myself as a broad more
I
often.
think you can. I think you're allowed.
I think so too. At the time of his death, Johnny's estate was worth about $274. So crime boss Mickey Cohen hired a lawyer to sue Lana on behalf of Johnny's son, who'd actually never officially met his father. In 1961, Lana settled that case out of court for 20,000, which is equivalent to like 210,000 in 2024. Mickey Cohen died in July 1976 from complications of stomach cancer. He was 62. In 1987, Cheryl released a book called Detour, a Hollywood story, which details the night of Johnny Stompanato's death. In the book, Cheryl sticks to the original story that she stabbed Johnny and it was nothing more than an accident. Of course, there are rumors that Cheryl never even touched that knife and that Lana was the real killer, but since neither woman is willing to admit it, I guess we just have to take their word for it. In the book, Cheryl said she and her mother referred to Johnny's death as the paragraph because every single time they were mentioned in the press, even for something such as like a book release, there was always a paragraph that talked about the death of Johnny Stompanato. Cheryl also wrote a mystery novel called The Bad Always Die Twice. She had a successful real estate career before retiring to Palm Springs with her longtime partner. As for Lana, she married 3 more times after Johnny's death. Unfortunately, none of them lasted. Lana divorced for the final time in 1972. She continued to appear in movies until her career slowed down in the mid 70s. Her final appearance was 2 episodes of The Love Boat in 1985. Lana was diagnosed with throat cancer in 1992, but by 93, she was in remission. Sadly, the cancer returned in July 1994, and Lana Turner died the following June at the age of 74. I have no more Hollywood fun facts for you because reporting for True Crime and Cocktails, I'm kind of cookies, but also just Chrissy.
Well, listen, what a wild ride. I
Yeah.
have so many things I want to talk about. I can't believe I never knew this story.
Right?
Yeah, I feel like even though I guess it's a paragraph every, article in their lives, it wasn't in mine. So let's take a break, hit the can, grab another drink, and we're going to be right back to discuss the Johnny Stompanato case on this episode of True Crime and Cocktails. One, two, three. Welcome back to this episode of True Crime and Cocktails. We're, of course, discussing Johnny Stompanato. And I got to tell you, at the very beginning of this episode,
Yeah.
you said Giovanni Stompanato, and you put so much Italian stank on it. It was incredible. It
I
made my
think
dreams come true.
I think honestly, if I could be anything, I'd be Italian.
Oh, listen. Have you watched The Sopranos?
You know what? I
Christy
never
Lynn.
did. I was
Yes.
violently into Tony Soprano
I know you loved James Gandolfini.
for weird reasons. I don't even know why. Um, but yeah, God, and it's a lot, isn't it? It's like 6 to 8 seasons or something.
Yeah.
God, maybe I should say here and now. Maybe I should start Sopranos because I just like 3 days ago, finally, after years of really trying to get there, I finished all of Justified.
Ah,
So I got to the end. It got a little dry and it just there were moments where you're like, "Oh, here we go." The last half of that final season, just everybody's dying in every episode, and it was just chaos and things going on, and I binged it so hard. Um, but yeah, maybe Sopranos is
think about it.
my and it'll be one of those, like, one day after watching Sopranos versus, like, 1 month, and I'll be like, "After watching fucking Sopranos," you know?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like it's oh, shit. I'll write it down.
I'd love to see this for you.
Yeah.
Now, what I loved was, and you probably don't know the answer for this, but Johnny Stompanato as a
Yeah.
teen got 2 women pregnant, 2 excuse me, 2 girls pregnant. Um,
As far as I know, just the
and
2, yeah.
and did those children were those children born? Like, was that
I assume,
wow?
but I don't know. I mean,
Because
it was only ever said he got 2 girls pregnant, and then it was like, "Let go."
and it's interesting too because when he was 20, claiming he was 25, he
Yeah,
gets married and has a baby, and then I just wrote down, "What about the other babies?" I bet you they were put up for adoption.
I could
If
see
it was
that.
a teenage mother and unwed
I
of
ass
the
I
time
assume
period.
I assume as much, but
Yeah.
it's tough to say.
I just have to say once again, when you were like, he would sit poolside with a magazine and hope people would approach him, I was like, "Fucking Hollywood, it's always the way," and then you were like, "For some intimate time. Didn't see that coming. Did
Yeah.
not see that coming at all. Um, I love that he said he'd sleep with men to pay his dues.
Mhm.
Feels like maybe he liked having sex with men because it came up a couple of times that it was like,
Yeah.
well, I'll also have sex with the men, for the good of the deal. And it was like, I feel like you just want to have sex
Yeah.
with men, dude. Like, which
Oh, yeah.
fine.
He never was told, like, "Hey, go do this," and it's like when his boss is like, "I've got this scheme. You're gonna do this to women." He goes, "And the men, right? Like, I could
Yeah.
do that." And it was like, but you don't have to. Like, we're gonna focus on these women." And he's like, "But,
He's
like,
like,
also the men, right?"
but like
Like,
also the men, right? Like the guys, because like I'll do it. I'll do it for this. It's like I think you enjoyed it,
yeah,
Johnny. I don't think anyone's pushing that hard
yeah.
unless there's which again, God bless.
If you
Enjoy
want,
it.
by all means.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just don't be a dick.
It did remind me now, I don't know if people have watched that Kevin Spacey documentary, which listen, a lot of people look in the documentary are talking about, um, their allegations of abuse and whatnot, which is obviously serious and awful. There was one guy in that documentary who was like, he was famous, so I decided, I guess I'm gonna have to sleep with him in order to get my movie made.
I
And so
appreciate the
then
honesty.
and so yeah, but the where it broke down for me was that he was like, so he picks me up in his car, and I started to give him a blowjob, but I just couldn't do it. Like I was only doing it to try and get this movie made, and I just couldn't do it. So then he like, he masturbated, and then he wanted to drive around talking. Can you believe it? And I was like, I don't know that you're a victim. I'm sorry, but like you literally you set the date with him. You reached out to him. You told him you wanted to do this like
Mhm.
um I don't know that him driving around wanting to chat is it's like
It's it's wild to be like, "Look, I put his dick in my mouth, and can you believe it? He tried to talk to me about his fucking day."
he tried to talk to me about his feelings.
Yeah, it's like yeah, and then he
It
brought
just
work
didn't feel like
into it.
and now again, I'm like this I'm only going by this man's own words in which he was saying things. Like it wasn't that he was being coerced, it wasn't that he was being groomed or that he was being talked into this. Like the
Right.
way he presented it was that he had deliberately sought him out to try and get this movie made. So anyway, it just made me think of
Right.
that where it was like, I'm not I'm not defending Kevin Spacey for absolutely anything. I'm just
Of
saying that
course.
that whole thing I was like, I don't know how to feel about this. Um, what was the next thing I had written down here? Oh, yes. Mickey Cohen going to prison twice, 15 years the second time, and left paralyzed after a terrible prison beating. Did not know that. Didn't know that he was partially paralyzed for the rest of his life. That's a fascinating
Yeah.
detail. Wow. Um, this whole scheme, isn't it interesting that everything that's new is just a recycled idea? Like the idea now that people are doxing people or using revenge porn by putting pictures of their exes on like compromising photos of their exes on the internet. Like it's the same thing. They were doing it back in the 1940s. They just didn't have the
Yeah.
technology that we do now to do it,
Yeah.
you know,
Why
faster and with more damage.
oh, yeah. I heard of one recently where, like, not famous people, but, a a girl broke up with her boyfriend, don't know the reason because it doesn't matter, um, and he responded by sending, like, naked pictures of her to her bosses, and she's a teacher. So that because
Jesus.
he was like, "Oh, well, I'll show you," and he sent photos that he had of her to her boss, and she's the one that got in trouble for it.
I
And it's
can't.
like, "But she didn't do anything." But you're right.
Yeah.
It's the same thing
Same
cycled
grift, same
over
thing.
and over again.
Let's find some people and get compromising photos of them and then blackmail them. It's the same concept. The only difference is that now people do it without trying to get money. People will just do it to try and hurt somebody, which is sick.
Yeah,
But again, the idea, it's been around, tale as old as time, song
yeah.
as old as rhyme. You said Billy Burke so many times, that made me think of my friend Bobby Burke. Shout out to Bobby Burke.
Hey, yeah.
Just because it's all I could think. Um, okay. Okay. Lana Turner, her story. Wowzer. This idea that she was kind of voluntarily placed in foster care is what it sounded like, because it
Yeah.
was like they couldn't care for her, so she went into foster care, and then when the mom found out she was being mistreated, she got her out and raised her. I mean, that right there is gonna do a number on a psyche, you
Oh, yeah.
know? When it's not like I mean, anytime a child is being taken from their parents and put into foster care, of course it's going to do a number, but when it was voluntary, it feels, and then I just said, "Oh my god, she must have hated surprises for the rest of her life." The fact that she was taken as a
Mhm.
nine-year-old to go see her father, and then when she got there, he was dead in a coffin, like, that would
Yeah.
do some damage.
Yeah.
Um, and of course, you know, it's interesting because it feels like there is this predatory nature to Hollywood. Not, well, I mean, that's not a hot take, obviously there is. But there's something that's so interesting to me because she's only 15 when she gets spotted, and
Yeah.
this girl has gone through it at that point.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm just talking out my ass here, but I think that there's something very interesting because Hollywood wants to destroy something beautiful, right?
Of
Like, it
course
wants
they
to
do.
use it and then crumple it up and throw it away. And I almost wonder, like, is there a sadness to her? Like, was there something, because you just know, like, there's so many women, especially men too, but there's so many women, especially, that they come to Hollywood and they get preyed upon in some way. And I'm
Oh,
like,
yeah.
is there something about the way that they look that they're more beautiful because there's a sadness behind their eyes, or there's something that is showing that they're vulnerable in some way? I don't know. I'm completely speculating there, but I just feel like this girl had gone through some pretty tumultuous, in the abuse she has suffered at the foster home.
Yeah.
It's just interesting to think about, you know what I mean? Like, is there a quality that reads on a person that's not necessarily tangible, but that makes them susceptible or appealing to someone who would be trying to take advantage of them in some way.
Yeah.
Now, it does seem that this person wasn't necessarily taking advantage of her in a literal nefarious sense. I'm just saying that in of itself, approaching a 15-year-old girl to start a movie career in Hollywood is predatory. It's not a
Yeah.
great industry for young people. I think we've seen a lot of documentaries talking about that recently, and
Oh,
there's a
yeah.
lot of truth there. There's a lot
Yeah.
of truth there.
Men
Um,
approaching teenage girls is
so
also something that's been recycled and used
yeah.
over
Yeah, that feels like a
and over again.
universal, yeah,
Yeah. I
disgusting.
saw a video, it was probably a TikTok today, of a teenage girl walking home, and a guy in a that's driving by in a car stops and is, like, trying to yell and talk to her, and so she starts filming with, like, her hand kind of down at her side so he can't see she's filming, and she was like, "Dude, you're creepy, like, go." And he's like, "It's not my fault. You're just fucking hot." And she went, "What I am doing is walking home from high school because I am 17." And he just went, "You're 17?" And she went, "Yeah, man." And without missing a beat, he just went, "Have you ever tried a real man?"
Gross.
To which she immediately pulled up the phone to show him she was recording. And he's like, "Why are you gonna do me like that?" And she's like, "'Cause you're a creep." I was like, "Good for her." But,
Yeah.
like, you see a girl, no. You see someone on the street, and you're like, "They're attractive," and you're like, "You're attractive," and they go, "I'm a teenager." You go, "My bad," and you fucking walk away. Better yet, you don't even speak to them at all, but,
Yep.
like,
Yep.
you hear
I think
17 and you
that's
just bow out.
I don't think there's any reason to have chit chat with a teen.
No,
I don't think there's any reason for it. You see a
no,
teen out, I don't think there's any reason to strike up a convo. You know why? What do we have to talk about, and to what end?
correct.
It's certainly if you are, yeah, no. I just think in general, like, there's no need for it. If it's a family member, if it's a child of a friend or something, of course, I'm not saying don't talk to to children.
Don't
I'm
talk to
just saying
teens. Yeah,
strangers on the street, what
correct.
compels you? Why do you need to why? I try to go out of my way not to talk to people, like, it's like
It's the safest way to be.
the safest way to be. I just
Yeah,
think about, if I meet a couple
yeah,
out, my innate is that I'm going to talk to the woman. And if there's ever some sort of like, we should hang out or we should be friends or whatever, I go to the woman. And I do
sure.
that because that's how I would want someone to treat me too. And because it's like, I don't want anything misconstrued.
Of
And by the
course.
way, I'm not saying this because it's a burden. It's very simple. It's very easy. And to be honest, it feels more comfortable for me. And what I
Yeah,
don't understand is how there is an inability that some possess to
yeah,
not just go, that's a child. I'm just not going to engage.
yeah.
It's very easy to me to just flip a switch and go, this is how I handle this situation because I am an adult. Anyway, I
It's very
digress.
easy to go, "Nope," and walk away.
Yeah. 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 Disgusting.
Yep.
Um, all right. Oh, there's so many things. Her marrying this Artie character on their first date and finding out he had proposed to Betty Grable days prior. What I like is that every person named in this episode, I feel like it's like, oh, like it's another name we know.
Yeah,
Um,
so much Hollywood.
so much Hollywood. Now here's something interesting. This was the moment after the Betty Grable reveal. That was the moment I wrote down Lana Turner blanket girl. But here's the thing.
Oh.
Here's the thing. I don't know if she is a blanket girl. And I'm gonna get
Oh,
into that in a minute. I'll get into that in a minute. At that point, I
sure.
was like, she's a blanket girl. I mean, for sure. But bear with me. So, um, the fact that Johnny tried to smother Lana while he was dating this married woman that he had multiple bank accounts with. I mean, this
Yeah,
just gets wilder and wilder.
yeah,
Um, okay. It's interesting to me that the day that he was killed was the same day that she found out that he was actually 11 years younger than he was claiming to be.
mhm,
That's interesting to me.
yes,
At this point, we know she has been in an extended, deeply abusive relationship with him.
yes,
Now, I want to preface this by saying this is not me in any way saying, why didn't she leave sooner? There is a million and a half reasons why it is
yep,
very fucking difficult to extricate yourself from those situations.
yep,
I don't want to, I just don't want anyone to interpret anything I say to be suggesting that because I'm not.
sure,
I just find it interesting that that was the same day it happened. I find it interesting that she was trying to leave him and that was the day it happened. I find it interesting that they essentially said that he ran into a knife.
yep,
Now, that's not here's a couple of thoughts that I have. And this is why I was like, is she a blanket girl? Because I'm like, did she orchestrate this? Because I feel like if and I'm speculating, if she was somehow behind the murder, then I would say that she somehow found some sort of she got the abuser back. So then I'm like, do you count as a
sure,
blanket girl? I don't know. I mean, still, I also do feel for Cheryl because it seems that her daughter Cheryl unfortunately was caught up in the cycle of being mistreated by people that her mother brought into her life, which is what happened to Lana too. And it's interesting to look at those things too, right? Like when we see this
right,
larger, you pull out the lens pattern, how you could argue in some ways, did Lana fail Cheryl in some of those situations? And then you go, well, guess what? Lana got very failed as a child in many
she did.
situations. And then you go, what's the step before that? How was Lana's mother failed? Because I guarantee you there was probably something there too. It's so sad to see the generational cycle
Oh,
happen.
100%.
But I do think it's interesting. Now, on one hand, I was like, did she kill her and then ask Cheryl to take the heat because Cheryl wasn't going to have to do the same kind of time because she was a child? Um, then I thought, what if the truth is that Cheryl really went for it? What if the
Mhm.
truth is that Cheryl, it was not an accident, or it wasn't a
Right.
he ran into her? What if she went for it? What if there was a scuffle? What if that's the reason that the walls had been recently washed? What if there was splatter? What if this was a larger attack? And so it wasn't that Lana had orchestrated this situation, but rather perhaps was they had made a pact together that it was like, how do we handle this to make this look like you're less guilty than you are? Does
Sure.
that involve moving the body? Does that involve doing some sort of cleaning, cleaning of the knife, all of the above? I don't know. I don't know. Um, I mean, there's obviously nothing but motive, of course.
Oh, yeah.
Uh, I think I have to just say Mickey Cohen hiring this mystery man to stand up in court and suggest there was a love triangle between Lana
Mhm.
and Johnny and Lana's daughter is so fucking sick. And the fact that that's the place that they would go is so fucking sick. And I understand they work
Yep.
for the mob. Why am I shocked? I shouldn't be. But it just is again, it's like, can you just try and defame the woman and lie in a way that doesn't have to involve that
Child.
the child? Can we just leave the
Yeah.
child out of it? But the answer is, of course, no.
Yeah. I think
Um,
they just genuinely couldn't think of something else.
right.
They were like, "Ah, I have no idea how we're gonna do that." But to outright be like, "Oh, well, the truth is she wouldn't let him go. He was trying to leave." And it's like, "Oh, there's so much evidence that proves
Yeah.
otherwise."
The fact that he had drugged her and took
Mm,
naked photos of her without her knowing, like,
mhm.
it's look, it's hard to find any compassion for Johnny Stompanato. I mean, the fact that he was,
Yeah.
like, physically abusing her so
Yep,
badly, the
yep.
fact like, all of these things, like, I'm like, "Ooh, it's tough to feel compassion." I'm not saying he deserved to die, I'm just saying it's tough to find compassion. Um, but yeah, I just think it's very interesting, and obviously we'll never know the truth. The fact that Cheryl in her book said she corroborated the same story. I mean, is there a world in which what they said happened? Absolutely. Sure there is.
Sure.
Um, is there a world in which I think that perhaps Cheryl flew into a rage and maybe there was more intent behind what she was doing? Sure I do. Do I think
Sure.
there's a world in which Lana did it and made her daughter take the heat? I mean, I hope not.
Yeah.
But then I go, why would they wipe the prints off of the knife?
Mm,
If it was Cheryl that did it, you would want to almost keep those prints on the knife.
correct.
What happened in the amount of time that the doctor was there between the doctor coming and finding Johnny dead and they called the police? Because you said it was over 100 minutes later. It was like 110 or 120,
Yeah,
right?
120.
Yeah. What happened in that time? Is the doctor culpable in some way? Did he help them move the body? Was he suggesting, you know,
He easily could have shown up and been like, "If I do something, I can save him." And they were just like, "Maybe just take a beat." And they were like, "Just let it go." It's possible they all just sat there and waited.
I also don't know, like, and this is a genuine question, like, at that time,
Yeah,
there was ambulances, right? Like,
I think so,
wasn't there?
yeah.
There has to have been. We've seen footage of there
Yeah.
has to have been. So I guess my question is, if someone takes a stabbing,
Yes.
are doctors trained in, like, emergency trauma medicine? Like, I don't know that I mean, maybe. I just my perception is that when you call a doctor to the house in the 1950s, it's like a man shows up with his black bag that he
Of
opens and pulls a
course.
stethoscope out of. Like, I don't know
Mhm.
whether I would think that he would show up with like the tools needed to do an emergency surgery, for example.
Oh,
Feels like it's
yeah.
more of a general practitioner vibe than
Sure.
like a
Yeah.
Dr. Hunt.
Child sick or someone's having a baby, then you call
Right.
the doctor at
Come to
that
the
point.
house.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I mean, again, I do think it was specifically like, she'll call her doctor
Right.
because he knows her, and it'll be like, "But look, I've called a doctor to do something, so I can say I did call a doctor."
Right.
Maybe it was, "I'll call a doctor because 'cause he'll be more discreet than an ambulance
I
coming to
could
my
see that
house."
too. I could see that too. I guess to me, it's just like we all know that if someone's been stabbed, they need to go to a hospital,
Oh,
right?
yeah. It's also wild to me that it was 1 stab, and they just happened to get, like, the prime spot that did so much damage that that was enough.
That's interesting too. That it was like, yeah, like a fluke of
Yeah,
where he was stabbed. And then I go, how long was he like bleeding out? He would have had to have,
you would think
right?
so.
I mean, that would end up being the cause of death, would be bleeding out due to the stab wound. I don't know what the terminology would be. I also just want to remind you, I did just reference Dr. Hunt, and I want to make sure people know I'm referring to Dr. Owen Hunt, who was a trauma doctor on Grey's Anatomy. I realized I mentioned Dr. Hunt, and then I was like, if I don't say what Dr. Hunt, people are gonna be like, is that her trauma doctor? Like, who's Dr. Hunt?
First
Um,
of all, Doctor Owen Hunt, what I could not love more, just the random reference of all the doctors you could mention on television, that Owen Hunt was the choice.
well, because he was the trauma doctor. He was
Of
the ER
course,
doctor.
of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look,
I
if I
don't
was
need
gonna say a cardiologist, I'd say Christina Yang.
of course, because if you're gonna mention a cardiologist, you're gonna mention the best. It is what it is.
Thank you.
God, I bowed out of that show in season 15 and have not
Yeah,
been back.
yeah.
I just I got to a point with it where, and I guess, like, after nearly 20 years or whatever it is now, it's just there were too many times that they took a storyline and they not unlike real life, they just recycled it later in a season. It was like, "Uh-oh, Meredith had a sister she didn't know about." Wild, and I was like, "Okay." And then, like, 4 or 5 seasons later, it was like, "Ha, you're not gonna believe this. Another sister she didn't know." And I was like, "Get the fuck out. Like, you can't keep doing this." And then just I kept getting so annoyed, and the characters I loved, would die or leave the show, and I the nail in the coffin for me is the treatment of Alex Karev, and I will never give Shonda Rhimes for the shadiness of it. I will not. I'm so upset about it. I don't believe he would have done what they did. They did his character dirty, and I'm upset about it. So then I was like, maybe it's time Grey's and I take a break, and it's been an amicable split.
On that note,
Yeah.
it feels right that we would go into our love of television when talking about well, in part talking about a woman whose final TV performance was The Love Boat. I mean, it just feels
Huh.
classic. It feels iconic. It feels like it makes sense.
Yeah.
I I just, this one is very interesting. I was riveted by the story because again, I'm shocked that I've never heard about this, that this was a thing. I had no
Yeah.
idea that Lana Turner was involved in the death. It's not me suggesting she did the stabbing, but it just feels like, yeah, it's interesting to me that
Mhm.
it was deemed justifiable homicide. Um and I hope that Cheryl went on to have a happy life because I feel like that's something really awful to go through, regardless of where the truth
Yeah.
lies. No matter what the truth is, all of those options are really hard. And it sounds like she just wanted to move on and live her life. The fact that she
Yeah.
was given the choice, you could live with your mother or your father, she chose her grandmother. I was like, okay, this is really painting a picture for us about what home
Yeah.
might have been.
Yeah.
Um, but anyway, regardless, I don't know. I don't know where I land ultimately. I don't know where I land on what really happened, and of
Mm.
course, no one will ever know unless there's some sort of deathbed confession if Cheryl is still alive.
She
Um,
is, to the best of my knowledge,
yeah.
yeah.
Um, but fascinating. A
Oh,
fascinating
yeah.
tale of Hollywood intrigue. Uh, could
Yeah.
not have enjoyed it more.
Oh, I I'm fully convinced that I'll bet she heard the fight. She could hear the yelling and him ripping a door off and breaking a
Yeah.
lamp and all of that. I'm convinced Cheryl heard it. Maybe she did go get a knife and she was like, I'm going to do something. And she got in there and the size of the guy kind of intimidated her. She drops it and her mother's like, this is it. Maybe he came towards the daughter and was like, I'm going to hit her. And she's like, oh, like hell you are. And I think Lana stabbed him.
Mm.
And then in that moment, it was like, okay, well, now we got to do something. And then it was like, wipe the knife. And then people would be more likely to believe Cheryl did it to protect her mother than, I mean, if Cheryl had done it, or if Lana had done it to protect her daughter, that could have also been justifiable. But because she was an adult and it was worried it would might damage her career or whatever, I think the daughter got thrown under the bus.
Mm.
I really do. And I think when the daughter put out that book and was like, that is how it happened. Well, her mother was still alive at the time. So I think if she had put the book out, if she had put some sort of book out after her mother died, I think she might have been like, "Oh yeah, it wasn't me." But
Well,
maybe
I
they
guess we'll
just
have to see. I
yeah.
guess we'll have to see if perhaps again the story changes.
It's possible. It's also possible she just made her decision that night of I'll take this.
Yes. Yeah,
But
for
I
sure.
can't imagine what the relationship between them was like. Again, Lana was away in England for months shooting that movie. Cheryl was back at home, I assume with her grandmother, and then when the movie was over, she went to Mexico for 3 months,
Yeah.
even though it was like, your crazy ass boyfriend threatened to kill your mother and your daughter, and you
Yeah.
went, "I can't deal with this," and went to Mexico, and of course, he ended up being there, and it's a whole thing, but still, I'm
Yeah,
not
I
I
just
wouldn't
think that there's also a world in which it was just not as accidental as they made it sound. That she came in with a
Oh,
knife and was like, "Bye, bye." Like, I could see it being
oh, yeah. It's more than possible the knife was already in the room.
yeah.
They were like, "We're gonna do this. We can't shoot him because that will look like we did it intentionally. It has to look like an accident."
Well,
Mm.
again, we'll likely never know what happened in the room that night,
Yeah,
and that's what we talk about, here on Sugar and Cocktails.
yeah.
Christy Oxborrow, fantastic work as always. You never cease to amaze and delight.
Oh, it was an honor getting to talk old Hollywood and mobsters,
Of course,
and then
of
rounding
course.
it out with Grey's Anatomy.
That's what we live for.
It
And we
is.
thank you, dear listeners, for joining us on this wild ride. If you haven't already, give us a follow on the socials on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at True Crime and Cocktails, on Twitter at Not Detectives. As we mentioned before, if you'd like some bonus content, go over to patreon.com/, True Crime and Cocktails to learn more about that over there. And of course, the only place for official True Crime and Cocktails merch is, of course, truecrewmerch.com. So check that out as well if you're interested. Christy, do you want to tell the people about next week's episode?
On the next True Crime and Cocktails, Unsolved Mysteries, The Severed Head.
This was the other episode of this season or collection of episodes that I did find confounding. So I am
Yeah.
very excited for us to discuss that. Cannot wait. Do you want to say goodnight to the people?
Good night, Alex Karev.
Good night, Kevin McKidd. That's Dr. Hunt.